Roxx really has kind of struck a chord, and with good reason, because it's not just the emotional side. There's a lot in the product as well.
176,000 bookings in an hour. Right?
Yeah, that's
Which,
right.
if you look at the data, Hormazd, that is more than the entire year's sale of something like a Creta.
You talk to some dealers, and I thought that people don't know, but they do. They say, "वो chassis वाला गाड़ी चाहिए, तोड़ फोड़ के चला सकते हैं."
The other thing also for the success of the Roxx, for me, is also the fact that they had so many powertrain choices. They didn't sort of hold back, let's say, saying, okay, this is a bigger, heavier Thar.
The Roxx is, how do I say? I wouldn't say a culmination, but it really is one of those products that epitomizes Mahindra at its best. Hello and welcome to our weekly podcast, Deep Drive, powered by Kotak Mahindra Prime. This week, we're going to be talking about why the Mahindra Thar Roxx is so popular, or why it rocks. I'm Hormazd Sorabjee.
And I'm Sergius Barretto. And yeah, Hormazd, I think that's really a very interesting topic. Why the Roxx rocks, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, firstly, the bookings are crazy. I think that's what prompted us to do it.
Yeah, 176,000 bookings in an hour.
Right? Yeah, that's right.
Which, if you look at the data, Hormazd, that is more than the entire year's sale of something like a Creta, which is,
that's right.
Size SUV.
Yeah. Well, obviously, they're not going to sell everything in 1 hour.
Right.
So they have capacity issues.
True.
But it absolutely shows that the frenzy this car has actually created. So I think we did get a sense that this car was going to hit, let's say, really strike a chord in people's hearts, and it absolutely has. In fact, to be honest, we have to say that Mahindra, what they've been doing of late, whatever they've been touching is gold.
Yeah.
3XO also still doing well, and they've now moved ahead to third place.
Correct.
Ahead of Tata Motors, and that's without the Roxx.
Yeah.
So, yeah, quite amazing. I think everything going good for Mahindra, and I think they're riding on a real strong wave.
Everything in the ICE world, actually, interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, they still have to prove themselves in EVs. That's going to happen next year. But I think in the ICE world, they've taken the market by storm. And I think really the Roxx is, how do I say? I wouldn't say a culmination, but it really is one of those products that epitomizes Mahindra at its best. And what it's played to every strength of Mahindra. Engine, chassis, features, looks, stance, what makes Mahindra great is there in the Roxx.
So, Hormazd, before we get into the discussing and talking about what makes it rock, right? Let's talk about the bookings though, because this number, in fact, we've got a lot of viewers who keep asking and saying that, first of all, are they genuine? And secondly, is there some duplication in them? And, what's the story behind these bookings?
Yeah, I think obviously, people do get skeptical, but this number 176,000 in an hour sounds, quite crazy.
Right.
But I think duplication is minimal, because right now each booking has to be against, an individual ID with all their Aadhaar, PAN details, right, that sort of thing. I think some of the bookings the dealers do for, let's say, the customers. So it's not against cash. The dealers are kind of, securing that booking. But I think a lot of the customers have booked themselves. And, when you talk to some of the dealers, you realize that there's been a real frenzy in the showroom. So this car was going to be, let's say the demand was going to be completely out of the park. And, it's come at a time when the market is supposed to be flat. And the cars, well, the pricing is fantastic by term of value, but it's still an expensive car. It's not a budget hatchback or something.
Exactly.
Where you get these sort of numbers. So it just goes to show, that I think that underlying craze for cars is still very much there. And, it's something that's, I think, grown after COVID. There's a love affair with vehicles that has kind of been reignited after COVID. Don't forget, before COVID, everyone was moving towards shared mobility, Uber, Ola, rides were the thing at that point. People really didn't want to have a car. I knew so many people who just didn't even want to get a license. But I think that all changed after COVID. Everyone realizes I need to have personal mobility, and life is short, and I want to enjoy it the best I can. Yeah.
So, Hormazd, that's a good sort of point to discuss. So what in the product do you think are the successes? You know, I mean, one obviously for me is the looks. You know, it's got that butch stance. It shouts, I'm different. It says, I'm tough. You know, all of that. So would you agree it's the looks that are created in the draw? Because it stands apart from a Creta, from a Grand Vitara, from Seltos or any other mid-size.
That's right. I mean, you know, I think we should guard against even comparing it with a Creta, though there will be overlap with that. Completely different products. But I think really what does it for the Roxx, and like with a lot of the other Mahindra vehicles, is body on frame. I think body on frame gives the vehicle a certain character you don't get in a monocoque vehicle. You know, that
love it or hate it.
Yeah. So, well, I think, love it or hate it. And I think a lot of them, you know, want that. It's got an indestructible feel. Whatever you say about a body on frame, it's got that really tough feel.
Right.
You know, in fact, you talk to some dealers and I thought that, you know, people don't know, but they do. They say, oh, chassis wala gaadi chahiye, tod fod ke chala sakte hai, you know. So it's like they know that they can just hammer it everywhere. They feel invincible. They feel that, you know, it's indestructible.
Right.
In fact, if you see a jump shot also of the Roxx in our review, I wouldn't have done that, to be honest, in XV700, you know, because it would be crashing against the bumps. So I think the body on frame is a huge draw. And I think Mahindra, again, is very well positioned there. If you see all its other products also, you see the Scorpio, you see the Thar, you see the Bolero, you know, all body on frame vehicles. That's been Mahindra's DNA. That's been their core right down from, you know, let's say from the time the company was founded in 1945. It was the first ladder frame. It's had this continuous ladder frame. And whilst others have abandoned the ladder frame for better CO2, lighter, you know, in a sustainable world, light is much better. And even Mahindra's doing an all-new monocoque chassis as well, which is a separate thing. But I don't think they're going to abandon the ladder frame anytime soon. Tata Motors did a big mistake with that. They had the Safari, the true Safari. The new Safari is nothing like it, just except for the name. Completely different in character. They had the Hexa. That also went. So, you know, Tata Motors, which was the traditional body-on-frame rival to Mahindra, is not there. You've got Toyota, which is the only other player in body-on-frame. Now,
in the mass segment.
Exactly. And Fortuner, again, it's got its appeal because of body on frame, but it's what? It's almost like now it's
not
60 lakhs. Exactly. And you've got the Innova, again, super reliable product. And, you know, maybe just the way it drives a gold standard in body on frame, to be honest, just the way they go on and the way they ride. So, you know, you come to the point where you realize, hey, body on frame has got a huge appeal, a huge advantage. And that's what the Roxx actually is all about. Because with body on frame, you've got the high stance. You've got that high seating position. It sits high off the ground. You've got phenomenal ground clearance. Mahindra has not disclosed it, but I think it's around, you know, if you don't count that lowest point where they have to get down to that 170 mm, you know, criterion, I think it's about 208, 210 mm. So really huge ground clearance. You can take it anywhere. With body on frame, you need strong and powerful engines because these cars are heavy. So you've got that with the choice of engines. So I think, you know, they've done an outstanding job. And as we know, it's more than a three-door Thar. It's not just a stretch Thar, is it?
Exactly. Or was it
like the Jimny?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I think for me also that's another, you know, I think reason why the Roxx is a success, because it's not a stretched three-door. It's wider. The track is wider. I mean,
in fact, honestly, it's an all-new vehicle. I mean, the logical thing to do, and that's what most would do to save cost, is, you know, and this is what Suzuki did with the Jimny. You had the three-door, and you just stretch it, slapped on, you know, let's say 2 more doors with the same narrow track.
Correct.
Now, Mahindra had the option to go with the same narrow track for the Thar, but they didn't do that. They widened the track, gave it a proper stance, and you can see that in the dynamics. And forget that, I think they went one further by changing the chassis also.
Yeah, they didn't use the Scorpio.
It's a new, what they didn't use the Scorpio chassis. I think, you know, Scorpio chassis did have its limitations. We've also found, you know, in terms of ride handling, it's a little bumpy. I think here what they did is they moved the suspension out, sitting outside on the body on frame. Clearly, much better dynamics, allowed, you know, let's say Mahindra to go with a slightly softer setup without upsetting body control, which is what, you know, is always the kind of aim and goal of chassis engineers. You want the suspension to be as soft as possible, but yet have that body control, without it kind of being too wallowy and things like that. So I think they've found a very, very good balance. I think refinement is again phenomenal in this vehicle.
Yeah.
You've got all the features. You've got lots of legroom in the second row, and I think boot space is also pretty decent. So they've really made a very let's say a practical, a well-rounded Thar, because don't forget the 3-door had a lot of limitations.
Correct.
I know we ourselves rode, it's not an everyday car. It felt a little bumpy.
Yeah, the two
exactly. That's right. The steering was stiff, no space at all.
Yeah.
So I think if at all, I mean, you're talking about competition, I think the main cannibalization would come typically from the 3-door Thar.
Yeah, and I think Mahindra knows that because they discounted the 3-door and then they reduced the price now, right?
Yeah, that's right.
The 3-door. So prices are come down. It's a clear indication that...
So it is the Roxx effect, but I think with that, now the 3-door sales have gone up. So I think they balanced it quite well. So I think it's not that. I think even they worried about the Scorpio Classic. They've reduced the price on that a little bit as well again. But I think, and I think that's really the beauty of, the Mahindra management. They just know how to kind of balance the positioning quite well and keep the volumes going. So I think obviously it's going to pull from somewhere.
True.
I think a natural, let's say, where it would hit would be the 3-door Thar, because everyone loves the Thar but finds it's got a limitation. Yeah, it's not an everyday vehicle. The way, or not a family vehicle. The one vehicle you can have the way the Roxx is.
Exactly. And Hormazd, I think the other thing also for the success of the Roxx for me is also the fact that they had so many powertrain choices. It's something that worked well with the Creta, we know.
But they have it for all their models. Exactly. Two powertrains.
Correct. Powertrains and
with two transmissions.
And two transmissions. So they didn't sort of hold back, let's say, saying, okay, this is a bigger, heavier Thar, diesel maybe. And it's fine, you want a petrol, auto.
No, I don't think they would in any case do diesel only at all. It's too much of a risk.
Too much of a risk.
Because especially in the NCR area, you have to have a petrol option.
Exactly.
And when you see in the NCR area, the petrol mix is a lot more.
Because you've got a Jeep,
we've got 10 let's say, year limit over there. And you've got, brands like Jeep and even Tata, which only have diesels over there.
Right.
So really, they've limited, let's say, the volume just by not being present in a petrol segment.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So they've got, the powertrain options. And I think that's right, fueling the Roxx side. The other thing, is the, I think you said, the gold standard, like the Innova, in terms of how a body-on-frame vehicles should sort of handle. I think the Roxx also could sort of compete for the title because they come very close to a monocoque with the Roxx.
It does. I mean, it's, let's compare it with the closest typical competition, which in a way, it's only the Fortuner because there's nothing else in between, though it's much more expensive.
Much better.
I think the ride is far better than the Fortuners. I think in Innova, it's more MPV, so, different kind of requirements, characteristics, target audience as well. So it's tuned differently. But I think this one rides far better than a Fortuner. And it's far more refined as well. I think they're giving a lot more. I think Toyota is really trading on their badge of reliability, which it definitely is.
Yeah,
I mean, no Mahindra is as reliable as a Toyota, that's for sure. You still have glitches and stuff like that, which, from what I understand, they try to kind of address very fast, but it's not as bulletproof as a Toyota is. So I think, clearly the Roxx is really has kind of struck a chord and with good reason, because it's not just the emotional side. There's a lot in the product as well. They've really put in a lot, as we can see, Powertrain options, as you said, they're not kind of, they have a power hierarchy. Still, the XUV700 has the most powerful engines. Right. But I still think, this is good enough. And I think that's really what's working in its favor.
And, also let's talk about, like, where would it draw customers from? Let's look within Mahindra's own, let's say, the siblings and then outside. Do you see the Scorpio, I'm talking about the Scorpio N, getting affected by this? Both are, the chassis wala vehicles, so can take pounding.
I think I think it's not so much Scorpio N. I think, it would probably, as I said, be more three-door Thar. And again, we've seen there has been an impact by the fact that Mahindra's had to reduce prices to keep that demand going. There will be, of course, some with Scorpio, and there'll be some with everything. There'll even be with the Creta, for example. Even XUV as well. But I think Scorpio, it's iconic in its own way. Guy who has a Scorpio, guy with tinted glass, kind of politicians. And I think the Scorpio also has a slightly wider rear seat because don't forget the Thar 5-door or the Thar Roxx. While it had a wider track, the body was just the same. So they couldn't widen that, obviously. So I think the Scorpio has an edge in these certain areas.
And the third row as well.
Which is a huge plus, gives you a lot of flexibility. And in the Classic, it's an absolute must for politicians. Yeah, your bodyguard jumps out. You open the door and opens...
Correct. Bodyguard special,
yeah, it's a bodyguard special because that's where they sit and they can easily jump out and, kind of open the door, get in and out. Correct. Open their boss's door, so to speak. Yeah. So I think... so they have their own, let's say, pull over there, especially the Scorpio. Though the Scorpio doesn't ride as well. Dynamically, the Scorpio is not as good as the Thar Roxx. In fact, the Thar Roxx really is far superior to the Scorpio. That's the way the whole dynamic packages. But I think the Scorpio has got its own set of customers and it's got such a strong legacy. People are on their third and fourth Scorpios and they'll keep buying a Scorpio. I think where it could pull a bit is, cars like the Tata Safari, Harrier, few from the monocoque vehicles, XUV 700, but they all know, these are not so-called chassis vehicles. They are monocoque. So they know they're not as tough as what a chassis wala vehicle would
Correct.
be. So I think that's where I think it would be. But it'd be interesting to talk, how it would be with let's say a Creta, which a lot of people are trying to compare it to. I think it's a ridiculous comparison because completely different vehicles for completely different people.
Oh, I fully agree, Hormazd. I know a lot of people have been saying this, like, it's better than the Creta. This is the new Creta. But you're right, it's a completely different product. There are the Creta. You and I both love that car. We all love the Creta here in the office, the long-termer. It's that no-nonsense vehicle that you don't think about. You're stuck in traffic, just drive, effortless. The refinement that you get in there, the sort of cocoon that you're in.
The Creta, honestly, today is the gold standard for that kind of monocoque, mid-size vehicle, of that size. And then clearly, I think the customers are very different.
Yeah.
I think a Roxx customer is someone who loves cars, wants to flaunt it, has got an emotional connect. Creta could be someone who doesn't like cars and maybe doesn't like driving that much, but just has to do it as part of his daily routine. It's just a very kind of comfortable, safe, trouble-free commuter with all the features and all the bells and whistles. And as you said, we've driven our long-term Creta and it is really hard to afford. It is the benchmark. Everyone, that's why we call it the Creta segment.
Yeah.
So, though there will be some overlap between Creta and Roxx, I don't think, the customer is the same at all. And I don't think we've seen Roxx impact the Creta sales at all right now. And clearly, that is, again, another product which is, I wouldn't say iconic, but coming into the second generation, the first one was so successful. It's like a no-brainer. It's a default, you just default to that. That's the one you buy without thinking. So I think that's really the name the Creta has earned. And I don't think you'll see customers, let's say switching. And don't forget, the other thing on the Roxx, it's also not as practical sometimes as a day-to-day vehicle. Because for one, it's a big step up in rear cabin.
Exactly.
For elderly people, that's a challenge. You have to use that step. If you're going to a function, it's a little awkward getting in and out of that, especially when you're dressed, ladies in saris and stuff like that. Clambering into a Roxx is not really very elegant to do that. The narrow door of the rear door of the Roxx isn't that wide.
Yeah, and you're right, Hormazd. There are a few sort of foibles around and a few missing things. For example, the lack of storage spaces. It's not the sort of most easiest inside in terms of cup holders and things like that. You've got white seats, which are going to be quite difficult to maintain.
Yeah.
They have an option of brown, but only on the 4x4.
That makes sense because that's going to be odd.
Guys going to go off.
No, but I think for me, really not enough storage space in there because, I think the minimum you need to have is a 1 liter bottle holder for every passenger in a vehicle like this, because you're going to be outdoors.
Long distance, yes.
I mean, that's what Toyota has. Every passenger can have a 1 liter bottle holder. That is really a norm which all vehicles that are intended for the great outdoors should have. These are not city vehicles really. They can be good city vehicles as well because they're easy to drive now, but they should have had this basic level of storage space, to have that much. And I think,
or at least, a door pocket that can be like sort of a dozen, I think, small bottles. Because I have a picture, we'll put it up, of I think 14 small Bisleri bottles in a door pocket of it.
But for me, I think that's just a good standard to have. A 1 liter bottle, then everything smaller can fit. But coming to the wide seats, I think we wrote about it. It looked like it was, as I said, it's like going to wherever, Chandni Chowk on Holi Day in a white suit. You're just asking for trouble. Yeah. But I think, again, talking about colors on the inside, I think all said and done, white does give you that premium feel. And I wouldn't be too surprised that a lot of customers still go in for it. I think it is becoming quite a popular color, but the mocha brown is there on the 4x4 and that's logical. So I think Mahindra, heeded that feedback from a lot of quarters and have given that option as well. So it has got its foibles, so to speak. But I think, a customer buying it knows that he's buying it for something else.
It's a different car.
Yeah, he doesn't mind jumping in and out of the car 20 times a day. So, whereas the Creta customer might find that an issue. So very, very different customers.
True. Yeah, I absolutely agree, Hormazd. In fact, I wouldn't say like, okay, a customer who doesn't like us, maybe he likes us, but for different reasons, like a trouble-free kind of thing.
Fair enough.
You don't have to think about actually anything with that car. I drove the Creta this morning here to the office, and you just get in and you are focused on everything else around you. You don't have to worry about the driving actively.
It detaches you from the driving experience.
Yeah, exactly. So in traffic, that's what you want. Of course, when you're going out and you want to enjoy your drive, that's not the Creta for you. But when you're coming through Bombay's traffic, sitting through. Right. I took an hour today morning.
Yeah.
There's no other car I'd rather be in the Creta with its cooled seats and, Bose sound system. And
exactly. And it's fairly compact. This is the right size.
Right size.
It's got the absolutely right footprint. Not too big, not too small.
Correct.
Good enough for the family at the back.
True.
And it doesn't take up too much road space. Whereas, the Roxx is a big vehicle.
Yeah.
So parking it is a challenge. Turning circle, not too bad for what it is, but it's still a big vehicle.
Correct.
And, so getting into a tight parking spot and also it's there. But I think, what's amazing is that people are happy to live with it. It just kind of does something to you, that look, that high stance. And I think, it's backed up by what Mahindra knows the few trigger points to make these vehicles successful. In fact, we talked about in our last podcast on the Scorpio. It's fantastic road presence, super pricing, which the Roxx has done, right from the base. Okay, the top end variants, obviously they get more pricey, and strong engines. I think this is what is characterizing the Roxx. It's got a strong diesel engine. And don't forget, I want to talk about diesel because these products are driven, or let's say a lot of their volume comes from the diesel, let's say segment as well. And I think in some cases it can go to even 70% diesel.
Yeah. Creta, I think on a national level, it's 50-50.
Yeah. So I'm saying with Roxx, it'll probably be more because, Mahindra's at that segment, they have been diesel traditionally. And whilst in NCR, there is an issue, people will switch to petrol. But I just think it's, to have that kind of sense of occasion, of power, of road presence, it just makes you feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it, brings a smile to your face when you walk to it.
Yeah, that's right.
You just feel happy, and I think that's a big draw on itself.
And people tend to forgive the smaller issues, which you do tend to get with, Mahindra's, and to be honest, Indian products, Tata as well. We still don't have that absolute last couple of % of quality the way, let's say, a Toyota has. I mean, I think even on our off-road test, the pedals came off. The metal finish pedals covering came off. Silly things like that, which shouldn't typically happen. But they do happen. But, people forgive the product for that, because it kind of just makes them feel so good, and it drives great. It's you can take it anywhere,
Right.
And I think again, let's not forget full 4-wheel drive capability.
Yes.
We've not talked about that at all, actually. I think that's really important. Who else in this price point is giving for 4x4?
Yeah, and a proper 4x4. It's
I don't think any.
it's not an all-wheel
Jimny.
drive. Yeah, the Jimny, but I think we've discussed the Jimny also in the podcast way, especially, right, where we did that. Unfortunately, it's got the hardware for off-road, which is
In fact, we missed it so much. In addition to Toyota and Mahindra, you got the Jimny now with a ladder frame.
with a ladder frame.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, they've got full 4x4 capability, but I think they're missing on a lot of other things.
Yes, absolutely. Engine.
Engine.
The smoke up.
You need a diesel engine in a ladder frame chassis. I mean, that's what you need,
And some power from the petrol.
Exactly. So I think that's very clear it was. They didn't have the road presence also, very narrow vehicle, very basic interior. So I think, again, just summing it up, the Roxx, I think it's that 4x4, you'll never use it, but, customers just want to have, let's say, the confidence of reassurance that, it'll get me out of trouble if I take it off. And I think another thing that's happening, Sergius, is that, the sense of adventure after COVID is just ballooned. People are driving everywhere. They're taking their cars out of town. And, it's something like a Roxx, again, you can go anywhere without a worry. I think that's really what makes, why it's got that appeal as well.
That's true. That's absolutely. And in fact, Hormazd, going out of town today is so much easier with the road networks too improving. So
that's right. The road network has really kind of, I would facilitated. It's kind of, let's say, triggered more and more car usage. I mean, car sales are going up largely also because road networks are improving a lot.
Right. True. So, Hormazd, before we wind up also, I want to just go back to something you said earlier. Everyone gave up, or a lot of people gave up on ladder frame vehicles. Do you think Tata should go back to that?
I think it's too late now.
Too late?
Either you have it, because, the way it's like someone developing a diesel engine now. It's great to have, but it's too late because the future is clear what the direction is, and don't forget, when you develop something, you need that investment to pay off over a long cycle.
The amortization period is just not there.
It's huge. So I think with, CAFE coming, tighter CO2 norms, tighter emission norms, ladder frames don't work for that. In fact, Mahindra's next phase will all be monocoque. They've got the ladder frame. Why give up on it? It's been part of their DNA and history. They know what to do with it, so they can continue making it as long as there are customers for it.
EV is going to be a monocoque.
The Thar EV will be a monocoque. The next gen Bolero will be a monocoque. But at the same time, the existing Bolero will still be sold on the ladder chassis. Just the way I think Mahindra do that beautifully. They don't discontinue necessarily. You've got the Scorpio Classic and the Scorpio N. A classic example, pardon the pun, of how, you can get two different kinds of vehicles with the same nameplate to sell concurrently, and both sell quite well because there are different kinds of buyers for them. So as long as there will be buyers for body on frame, I think Mahindra will keep making them. But I think, going forward for CAFE, everyone has to go to monocoques. Toyota is going to monocoque as well. I mean, they've kind of said that they might have a Scorpio competitor, but a monocoque.
The monocoque version.
So I think the writing is quite clear over there. So I don't think Tata, I think they missed it, after the Hexa. And, you just can't have one vehicle. You have to have multiple vehicles. And they've never had that product range the way Mahindra has had, So they had the Sumo and the Safari, these two vehicles. And before that, obviously the Sierra. So that was a time for the golden age of the Tata ladder on frame products, which just went away after the Hexa disappeared. And Mahindra, as I said, it's a really part of their DNA, and they are kind of it is a ladder frame chassis is what a Volkswagen Golf is to a Golf is to Volkswagen. It's so intrinsic part of their history. Their heritage is more than just it's kind of a technology or a way it is done. So I think they will continue with that. So I think but really, I think amazing numbers of the Roxx. Now, we really have to see what the sales figures are. And I think before we end, we'd like to talk on, I think, how many they can sell. So from what we understand, the capacity is about 9,500 for the Thar line.
The combined.
3 and 5 doors. So I think they have a way of mixing it. it's a great number to have to be able to max it out. So I think they're looking at 3,000 Thars and about 6,500 Roxxes.
Of the Roxxes.
Yeah, so I think that's what it is. I don't buy.
Quick mental math was that's still like a 2-year wait for just this.
That's right.
1,76,000.
But I think what will happen, a lot of those bookings may be cancelled, they may be refunded. It kind of, this is just that initial euphoria. But all said and done, their first year of production is definitely maxed out.
Definitely, yeah.
Whatever happens, So I think that's a fantastic wicket to be in. And as I said, Mahindra is, whatever is touching is becoming gold right now. Great position for the company to be in. So great. I think with that, we'll wrap this edition of Deep Drive up. Hope you enjoyed watching it. You can also hear us on Spotify and Apple. And don't forget to subscribe so you're notified every week. We are back on next Saturday, 11 o'clock in the morning.